Welcome back. Cardinals are set to pick the next pope at a secretive ritual we call a conclave, which starts tomorrow in Vatican City. They're going to hold as many rounds of voting as needed inside the Sistine Chapel there. You see the final preparations in place. Billions, arguably, will be watching the chimney on top of the chapel there. Black smoke, of course, means no pope yet. White smoke means we have a new pontiff. And we also have new CBS News polling on this subject. And for that, we turn to Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, who's in New York, with new data on the conclave. Anthony, what are American Catholics looking for in a new leader, and how does that relate to Pope Francis?
Good to talk to you, Ed. No smoke coming out of the touchscreen, which is probably good. But we do have a new poll. Look, here's the big number. You get wide approval among U.S. Catholics for the direction in which Pope Francis, in their mind, led the Catholic Church. And what that leads to then is, do they think that the next pope, whoever it is, ought to continue Pope Francis's teachings? And you do get a big number, 4 in 10, who say that the next pope ought to. There is a third that say, no, there should be more conservative teachings, and then another 21% who say, well, more progressive teachings. But the other thing here is, where does Francis leave the church? And this is what the next pope is going to be looking at. Before Pope Francis, fewer Catholics in the U.S. said that the church was in touch with the needs of Catholics. And that number over the course of the years went up to now where it's a majority. So that's the relatively better position that, in the minds of U.S. Catholics, the Pope Francis left the church at.
Yeah, polling obviously won't play too big a role in this. More like prayer, probably, Cardinals would tell you. But that is interesting, that there's further surveys suggesting now people want some consistency with what Francis was up to. Now, he spoke out on many different issues. Is that what Catholics want?
By and large, yes, it is. You get almost 2/3 who say that they do want the next pope to speak out on world political affairs, et cetera. And then the other part, speaking of around the world, we ask, well, where should the next pope come from? What region of the world? And by and large, U.S. Catholics said that's not important. But the ones who do pick, when they do pick, the U.S. is the top answer. They would like to see a U.S. pope. And, you know, I will point out to folks here, if you look at where cardinal electors are from as they gather there in the Sistine Chapel, this is your map of that. And you see, you got 16 from North America, you got 10 from the U.S., Europe, very heavily, apportioned there, and Italy at 17. But this is your distribution of where the cardinal electors are coming from. Again, U.S. folks in the U.S., Catholics saying they'd like to see a U.S. pope.
Not only does he discuss the Electoral College with us, he discusses the makeup of the College of Cardinals. Anthony Salvanto will be watching all this as it starts tomorrow. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.